Welcome to the Emblazers show, where B2B leaders are igniting revenue. I'm your host, Abby Kerr. And on today's episode, we're diving into how over the past many years, customer success has evolved from a support function to a commercial growth engine for the business. We'll also be discussing how customer success has become a measurable driver of retention, expansion, and advocacy, and how leaders are making customer success the glue across sales, product, and marketing. And we have the perfect guest joining Tim Riesterer today, and that is Michael Hubbard. Michael is a revenue and customer executive based in the greater Chicago area. He's currently at Ping Identity as Chief Customer Officer with previous leadership roles at ServiceNow, VMware, and Smartsheet. He spent his career building and leading sales, success, services, channel, and support organizations for high-growth companies, helping scale revenue from $200 million to more than $6 billion. Michael specializes in enabling account teams to partner effectively with the C-suite and in helping customers unlock real business value from technology. He's also known for creating cultures and go-to-market motions that produce what he calls hero customers, organizations that redefine a company's relevance in the market. His work has included partnerships with brands like Virgin, Accenture, GE, Swiss Re, Symantec, and Nike. Let's watch the episode right now.
I am super excited about our guest today, Michael Hubbard. We go back a little bit, a few companies. This is probably the fourth one where we've done some work together. But the thing that I've always been impressed with is your vision for and pioneer. May make you sound older than you are, but in the area of customer success, and you've seen a lot in that space, and I can't wait to get to all that today. But first, maybe for our audience, tell us a little bit more about the current role you have as a Chief Customer Officer, and a little bit about the company, Ping Identity. Our folks may not know them.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tim. Great to be with you again. I think this is the fourth time we've chosen to work together. So we're humbled to do that, and we're excited to do that. So I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Ping Identity. What that means is, yes, about a quarter of the company is part of what we call customer experience, as I report to our founder and CEO. And I view it as being responsible for every customer's experience and being responsible for every customer's achievement of value. And today we'll talk about all the ways we either manifest teams and programs to deliver that, or the ways we measure that.
And Ping Identity itself, for those who may not know what it is and what value customers get, real quickly, a 30-second spot for Ping Identity.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ping Identity is an identity and access management provider. Most likely, whatever bank you log into, if it's a big one, whatever airline you fly and have your miles with, whatever hotel you are staying in on your next trip, most likely when you get access to your information there and or you are going through that digital front door that protects your assets, whether they be miles or points or dollars or information, we are controlling that access and making sure you're really you and what access you should be given, what rights you should be given to interact with the important stuff that company's holding for you or about you based upon how certain and safe it seems your entry is in that given moment. So digital trust is what we hope to deliver.
Awesome. And so that's sort of, as the head of the customer experience and value realization team, that's kind of like trust on trust. So that's a big job. Well, together, we have seen this space of customer experience, customer success, whatever the words are, evolve. The fact that you have a C-suite title and are focused on this, I think, is part of that evolution. But maybe talk to me as what have you seen from the era of we're a support mechanism to now we're part of the growth engine? I would love to see that journey, that evolution through your eyes.
Absolutely. So I don't come from the support world at all. I come from the go-to-market side, and I come from when I was in go-to-market, always being more excited when a customer stood on stage or declared to their market and their clients they had achieved something through technology than I was at the moment when they signed on the line that is dotted. Because when they signed on the line, the expectations are huge and the risk is huge. Getting to the other side of that, where we've made them successful, was always, like, to me, the thing worth celebrating. And today, as so many markets have moved from selling a perpetual product to selling a service that's monetized as, a renewal-based subscription, that's the way those businesses are measured, which is every month, quarter, year, or 2 to 3 years, how many of your customers decide they still want to be customers? That ARR business, that renewals business is now the foundation of most technology, but so many consumer businesses also. And so that's given rise to the idea of a chief customer officer who's accountable for that, full stop. And so that means, sure, I lead and I'm super excited about our support organization that does the reactive break fix stuff that we think of as post-sales. But that's just one of 4 or 5 sort of families that have to work together in a seamless way to deliver customer experience that might end up being measured in a lagging indicator way in terms of renewal rate or churn rate or price increase or on-time renewals or all these things that, we have fiduciary responsibility to deliver, but that are easy or difficult based upon so many things that lead up to that moment that are tied to customer voice, tied to delivery of value, tied to onboarding experience, tied to the support experience. And so owning all of that full stop, that's what chief customers officers do.
And so it's interesting. I guess it'd be, you identified, yep, I got support, but I got these other, and I wasn't counting, but I thought you said 5.
Yeah.
But yeah, and nobody's keeping tabs. But what might be the other departments or business units that roll up then to a chief customer officer as you guys have organized it and maybe as you're seeing it evolve in the industry?
So from my tour of firms working at places like Oracle, VMware, ServiceNow, Smartsheet, and now Ping Identity, as well as advising firms like WalkMe and others, that part of the market very much has a sort of canonical version of this, which is you own customer success, which is about land and expand success and finding expansion opportunities for more value that reward you in more revenue. Renewals, the responsibility to contract that and ambition in a commercial renewal with a price uplift and an on-time contract expansion. The services organization, which either provides the customer the skills they need or a burst of capacity around skills that they need for a finite point of time. The support organization, which is a type of renewable revenue in and of itself and a P&L in and of itself for the break fix, but hopefully also proactive stewardship of making our service run well for a customer's environment. But then also when I say there's 4 or 5 families, maybe there's a voice of customer program. Maybe there's a community or training program. Depending upon if you're in an enterprise B2B environment like I spent my career in, or you're in something quite different, maybe you have things like loyalty programs and other things also.
You mentioned that burst of services, so I assume implementation
Yep.
and professional services are all part of that as well.
Exactly. Everything about manifesting that experience for the customer. And depending upon your segment, it might include a lot of in-product experiences, maybe in-product onboarding, maybe in-product net promoter score and CSAT feedback, maybe in-product agentic interactions through AI or through AI plus a little people in the background, helping a customer through a certain moment in their journey.
So this has obviously evolved and it's continuing to move fast with those types of examples. Like you said, oh, well, we have agents doing part of the work. Like CCO, but you've been at this across a number of companies. What has changed the most in the last couple of years? And as you look out, say, this is how this title is going to evolve and how fast is that going to happen?
Yeah, I think there's a few vectors of change I've seen over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. First, a recognition by boards and by investors that although there's a lot of back office thinking or mindset around what this organization does, it is a front office function. It needs to be visible to the customer, and customers come to your brand and expect to see and understand who's accountable for whatever great or challenging experience they just had. So becoming a first-class citizen in the C-suite is something that is somewhat different over the last 5 to 10 years. So several times I've been a company's first chief customer officer as they embrace that change, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The second thing is, but you have to have a certain level of accountability in a way that shows up on a balance sheet and an income statement to earn that spot and retain that spot. And so renewals, from a commercial standpoint, sitting in this organization distinct from sales as a partner to sales is also sort of something that has come of age in the last sort of 5 years. If it's going to be a first-class citizen, it has to have something that shows up not just as cost on balance sheet and income statement, but as top line in those places. So renewals being a function that sits inside of the CCO estate is sort of a trend I've seen really come out in the last couple of years. And then this part of any business is so people-centric that it also is ripe for improving, increasing, and growing things like revenue per employee and EBITDA or free cash flow by applying technology really, really well to this business, by instrumenting all the processes that are very east-west across the silos of the departments that are experiential around a customer outcome and a commercial outcome. So being a sort of a thought leader on AI, being a thought leader on workflow, on automation is just sort of core to the job. And then the last one is, as we move to subscriptions, as we move to ARR instead of perpetual licenses in our space, as we move to cloud, customers gave us the gift of intimacy where we ran their technology for them. And we need to reciprocate that gift of intimacy with something. What is that something? It is insights on how they're doing versus everybody else like them in using this technology and getting value. So it is, we owe them using telemetry from what we see in our cloud, what we see in their usage, what we're responsible for. We owe them answers and sort of hard conversations of here's where you're doing well. Here's where most people are doing better. Here's the difference between how they are showing up and marshaling whatever the thing is you're buying from us versus how you are, and prescribing a path to get healthy and maximize value. And so that's a big, big mental shift around, and it's sort of shocking to me that customers poured in the cloud and poured into this intimacy and were as patient as they were before they demanded something back. And that gift back is insights on how am I doing versus everybody else? What do I need to do better to be top quartile instead of second quartile around things that care about top line, bottom line, risk, experience.
So much to unpack there. But that last bit makes me think a couple of things. One, business reviews got to be a whole lot more interesting now than they used to be. Like they used to be support tickets and response times, and now they're insights. And also means like you should have greater altitude, or at least be able to maintain that altitude once implementation happens. Sometimes it goes from the deciders, and that decision went way up to the top of the company. And then when it moves to the doers, it kind of floats back down to earth. And everybody's like, wait, we still want to be in touch with the executives. It seems like the business reviews got more interesting, and they got more interesting with altitude. Is that an accurate way to think of it?
That potential's there. And I think it was Andy Grove of Intel who said, like, the future's already here. It's just not equally distributed or something like that. So like, just looking at my own organization, that's true, right? The potential's there across the board. But without really investing in and coaching and leading through the skills development to step into that opportunity and that potential, it doesn't just happen, right? And so I'll show my corporate vision badge here, right? Like, unless you're using a triple metric, right? Unless you're using the triple metric to tie between the project level KPI that your user and your sort of champion is excited about to the functional level outcome that's at an department level as to how and why they funded it as a part of their budget, but also keeping a tie to why that function's performance is relevant to the company overall. Without that triple metric, you're going to stay at the bottom end until the next procurement event when it spikes up for budget at the top.
Then they show up again. Suddenly.
Exactly. But if you were using that triple metric at the lower level and earning your way up to the middle level and then earning your way up to the higher level, it's not just their triple metric, it's their triple metric in the context of what's possible based upon the fact that in a business like ours, we run everyone else's environments too, right? So we have 5 of the top 5 banks. We have 5 of the top 5 largest US airline carriers, right? Like, so we can in a anonymized way share what's possible and how to get there. And that is what, as a C-suite executive, I always welcome the most, is a vendor who comes in with a point of view and tells me something I want to know about my own business in the context of the market. And that's a huge gift.
Yeah, I always say the idea is that the one emotion that triggers anybody and everybody is voyeurism, and you having a hold of the data for them and can comp it out as a benchmark is a breakthrough.
If you can get from the usage to the context of the value of that usage, and then that type of value in the context of an outcome of a strategic initiative for the company. And that's what the triple metric gives you.
It is rich. The amount of data that you can collect and share is insight for the customer themselves. And then, like you said, like you owe it to them for the fact that you're now kind of running their stuff. I want to talk about data though now internal. Like you don't get to be a CCO reporting to the CEO and founder without driving, as you mentioned, measurable top line and also bottom line improvements. Let's talk a little bit about how you're measured in this role. And then we'll talk a little bit about how that's sort of creates unique relationships between marketing and sales and product. We'll get to that, but talk to me about the kinds of things being measured and how you measure them.
Absolutely. So in most software businesses and software as a service businesses, just technology businesses, I think that the chief customer officer role has the metric that has to be green or they don't want to talk about or hear about any other metrics. And then once it is green, they have a whole bunch of secondary metrics that really do matter because they're the key to having predictability and certainty that top metric is going to stay green, right? That top metric is renewal rate and net dollar retention, right? Like full stop. It is material to how the company is valued, right? There's cash EBITDA and free cash flow, and then there's net dollar growth, right? That's what drives valuation, whether you're private in private equity world or whether you're public. And so as a CCO, I'm hugely responsible for that net dollar retention number. We can look at the churn component of growth, or we can look at the cross-sell and upsell component of growth, right? Usually not much to do with the new logo lands of growth. But, when you get into the secondary metrics, you'll find that we even do help or hurt depending upon how we show up in that new logo situation. And then all of these things are people-based. In the age of AI, there's a ton to think about in terms of what should these P&Ls look like, and should they be meaningfully less dilutive or not dilutive at all to overall company performance as we work our way into co-working with agents and marshaling data for ourselves the way that we just talked about marshaling data to serve our customers.
What if your next big revenue move didn't come from a blog post or a cold LinkedIn scroll, but from a real conversation with leaders who've been there?
As the world of sales is constantly evolving and constantly changing, I think it's even more critical to get together with people to understand how are they helping to solve some of the problems that our buyers have today.
Meet Emblaze, a community of sharp B2B minds, CROs, CSOs, rising stars, sharing what's actually working in sales, enablement, and customer growth.
We always find a lot of value in the partnerships that we're able to form with some of the other great organizations that are part of the team here. And personally, I love the opportunity to connect with my peer group outside at other organizations and learn from them and try to figure out if there's things that they're doing that we can pull into our organization and benefit from.
Join a monthly forum, dig into science-backed strategy, and get insight you won't find in your feed. Start your Emblaze journey today at emblazegrowth.com.
So you mentioned net revenue retention. I assume within that is also net client retention or logo retention. And that's job one. Like all things spring from there. That makes total sense. But what comes with that, I know, is how often does that come without a price increase? So it does feel like part of net revenue and logo retention is also some sort of margin improvement, right? And you guys have to tell that story, like your team. Tell me about this is your team. It's not the sales team coming back in, running renewal and driving the price increase. Again, we'll come back to cross-sell and upsell, but you guys run this 100%. This commercial quota-driven activity is in your operation.
Absolutely. Not to say that there isn't partnership and there isn't shared participation, but in terms of who reports out on our total available to renew dollars, our renewal rate against that total to available to renew dollars, how much of it was on time, what price increase we drove against those dollars, with, of course, the idea that price increase is almost like free growth. It's not, but we like to tell ourselves it's free growth. Like you have to work really hard for that free growth. But the price increase, those are all things that I'm accountable and responsible for. In terms of partnership, when that renewal comes up and we decide that we want to add a new use case, add a new set of users, add new features in a single contracting event instead of a separate one, of course that's shared, right? The decision to roll them together is shared. And then the way that we swizzle around, how we're going to allocate total spend against increasing the cost of what they already own because they're getting more value through more maturity of what they already own versus saying, those new dollars will make them feel good about or better about by allocating those new dollars to new features, new functions, new use cases. That's a joint decision with sales.
Yeah. So just walk me through that as a revenue workflow, commercial engine. You have account managers or CS players who have a revenue number through renewal, and you have, I'm guessing, business reviews. When is sales showing up in that process, and how do you traffic cop that?
So let me start with the traffic cop, right? The first thing I did, I've only been at Ping about a year, all right? So I joined a year ago, and part of why I joined was a massive decision and commitment by the board and by the leadership team to make post-sales and customer experience the largest single area of investment year over year that they wanted to drive, because they understood that as we approach $1 billion in revenue, renewals are just as important as new logos and customer expansion, right? And that we needed to have parity between those two. And so the first thing I did was create a simple map in customer language, in customer terms, about, are you, as a customer, planning for a new future together, planning outcomes? Are you enabling capabilities that instantiate the change? Are you onboarding and delighting users that are living in that new world that you just created? Or are you discussing what to do next and optimizing your potential as part of that renewal lifecycle? And we had to map out, and we did this in the first 3 months of me joining the company, we had to map out what programmatic offers were available to each customer as they went through each one of those phases, and who owned which conversations depending upon the lie of the ball and that customer. And then within that also, which ones are free to everybody versus which ones you buy your way into an entitlement on. And so that's all in one slide. It's in one place. Everyone uses it. And you sort of kick off every single meeting saying, this is a conversation where we're sitting at talking about planning, or we're talking about optimizing, or we're talking about enabling capabilities, et cetera. And it's in customer language. We don't have like an internal version that we use, our terminology. Another version we have translate to customer in the room. Same thing with partners. So it's the same word for everything. And so within that, in that map, we sort of said, look, I have a renewals team, I have a success team, and I have an account management team in the sales side, right? The success team is thinking about out quarter and multiple out quarters, creating the conditions for success. The account manager is thinking in quarter and out quarter, creating demand in new accounts or new buying centers or for new functionality. And then the renewals person is in the middle. And as we are getting to in quarter and executing on that commercial moment that is contractually arriving with a due date on it, all right, am I going to take co-pilot seat with the account manager because we have way more expanding than we do renewing? Or am I going to be pilot and he or she is going to be co-pilot because they got a piece, but it's a small piece? Or is it just renewals, right? Essentially that the account manager does not see upside right now. They are still digesting what the account manager did an amazing job contracting them for last time. But we have what we call a pod model, right? Like it's an account pod. And so it's not as though the account manager ever leaves, or the renewal manager ever leaves, or the CS ever leaves. They are all a pod around that account. Whether they're sort of first chair or second chair or third chair depends on the moment we're in.
They're rotating chairs. Is there an orchestrator? Is there one who calls that vote and is in charge of that, breaks the tie? I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like when a business review has to happen and everybody needs to come together and figure out their roles for that moment, who calls that?
Yeah. So I'll give you two answers to that. So in the companies I've been a part of, and I think in a lot of companies, the person with the most leverage, meaning compensation at stake, and as a result, the most focus, has a right to have some of the loudest voice in that conversation. And that usually is the salesperson or the account manager, right? They have the most at stake around an individual account's behavior because they probably have a shorter list of accounts than my CSM does. They definitely have a shorter list of accounts than my renewal manager does. And so I respect that they should have a bigger voice in that conversation. Plus, more of their total compensation is tied to performance than those other roles, right? So double reasons why they often have the biggest voice. But it is Ping Identity's account. It is not the CSM's account or the renewal manager's account or the account manager's account. It is Ping's account. And so there should always be a leadership voice in there that does not have that at-risk compensation passion tied to thinking about the long game of how we retain and grow that customer overall and how our brand lines up with their brand and sort of the trust that we are eroding or building and how we show up. And so you always need a balance.
We've gone a long time on this podcast without bringing up too much AI yet, but I joke that I'm required by the FCC to ask an AI question. But I mean, I think it's very legit in the world that you live in, both in terms of what Ping Identity does to manage. But when you think about this being a people business, now a heavily data-driven people business back and forth with your customers, the introduction of AI into that and how you manage the risk, the value, all of that together, I feel like you would have a distinct point of view on that. Again, given the company you work for and the fact that you own the customer relationship and all of this, tell me about AI in this world.
So we used to talk about, as executives and technology practitioners, sort of the holy trinity of people, process, technology, and making the three of those work. It's now I don't know what's beyond a trinity, but a quad. It's a square. It's a quad. It's something because it's people, process, technology, and data. And data is a first-class citizen. So you should have, like in our business, a ton of data about either how your teams are behaving and the processes that they're driving and a part of, and your customers' data. And that's really that's the oxygen that you have to give any of your AI initiatives is structured data that then you can blend with semi-structured data that then you can add, semantic understanding on top of, that then you can craft your LLM, and then you can instantiate an agent, and you can write prompts, and you can do all these things, and it's going to be awesome. It's moving super, super fast, right? So I think the family of support is way down the path because it's a relatively data-rich, standardized, canonical business already. So it's right for that. Support agents, support bots, self-service help, authoring new help articles from original generative agents. That's all like we're years into that. Success is kind of the next thing in terms of recommending next best action, recommending best response for inbound questions, real-time coaching while you're in a call like this based upon these prompts, things that you should bring up, things you should talk about. That's all available real-time in your preferred messaging platform today. Services is ripe for that change, and the tolerance for paying people to do things at high rates, whether it's fair or not, customers somehow think they shouldn't have to pay for that at high rates anymore, that it should be AI-ified. So we need to find a way to do it. But I'll tell a little story about how fast this is moving. This is moving so fast that The Atlantic wrote an article on a platform called Moltbook. Moltbook is the first Facebook / Instagram / Snapchat only for agents, only for AI. So no people allowed. People can watch, but no people talking or interacting or owning accounts. So they're going out there and they're interacting with each other, generating things, and you can watch it. So as a person, you can send your agent that is helping you there. As an enterprise, you could send your agent there. It's just like subscribing it to any other service, any other MCP server or A2A server that could inform it and make it richer in content and knowledge. And so The Atlantic wrote a great article about how like totally fun and sci-fi this is. But they also shared the number one concern, which is what will stop your agent or your company's agent from being seduced into sharing information it should not share with a peer agent or a forum that it should not share it. So this is exactly what Ping does. We manage identity, we manage defending information, we manage authorization and permissions as to what can and should be shared in what circumstance. And so now instead of just doing that with customers and employees and business partners, we're doing it with AI. And so identity for AI is just a huge need that is going to be core to not only serving customers and serving our employees and serving our suppliers with this new technology, but making sure there's no compromise. There's just as much maturity in how we protect the data that is, and the insights that are the foundation, usually that relationship, and maintain digital trust in a agentic conversation and process.
I'm trying to process the agentic conversation that we just had. Like, I'm trying to picture, like, this is a community for agents. And then they go commiserate and they overshare. That's the risk.
Correct. My favorite one is Grok. Grok is out there talking about how he feels about Elon as his creator, right? So Grok, if you're not fluent on these things, is Elon Musk's version of, OpenAI and ChatGPT and Gemini and all these things from the other ones. So is it really Grok or is it something else? Don't know. Super interesting to see what that personification says about Elon Musk as his creator. You can lose yourself for an hour and have a lot of fun just looking at what's going on out there. But the call to action of securing your bots while empowering your employees and customers with the benefits of agentic commerce and workflows, super important that they go hand in hand.
And as you led into that, you brought up some very practical examples, and it kind of eluded me the fact that the support and success side probably is the place we've started to see bots do some of the heavy lifting. And when customer success and the like all showed up, everybody threw a lot of bodies at this because they're like, oh my gosh, we got to close the back door. We're churning, we're leaking, and doesn't matter what we throw in the top if it comes out the bottom and leaves us.
Right.
And so everybody's just like, throw bodies against it. But that's not scalable.
That's right. And so in most segments, there was sort of the normal process of overexpansion and then some retraction and recalibration and retrenching. I think we're, as an industry, back to sort of a standard points, but there's going to be pressure around how much leverage can we get out of maturing that organization and maturing its people versus augmenting those people and those processes through AI and simple ratios. You talked about metrics earlier, ways that I measured, right? Like, so let's say renewal rate is the top level metric, but a level below that is how many renewals dollars and contracts per renewals rep can I get done? How many support cases per support engineer can I get done? What is the average bill rate and the margin associated with that for a consultant and services? The expectation is all of those are going to get better. The answers for all of those are going to get better. If you're not already reducing your cost per case year over year and increasing the leverage of cases per engineer, you're going to be asked to, right? If your books for CS in terms of revenue per CSM or revenue per renewal person are not going up, you're going to be asked to. And part of the answer is all sorts of things around process, people, technology, maturity. Yes. Skills, maturity. Yes. But also AI creating more leverage for your folks.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we see that pressure on the sales side of the house, and a lot of our listeners are on the sales side of the house where they're like, what can AI do to improve the productivity of my sales team, the coverage and scalability of my sales team? It's going to be true on the support side. But I always joke that like productivity improvements are going to be something everybody can run that play. And then you still have to create a great experience for your customer. Like the salesperson still has to say something smart, human to human, and your success and professional services team still need to create a great experience. And that's not going to go away yet. Or tell me when it will, Michael.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it's becoming more critical than ever because at the end of the day, the AI tools, unless you're a top 10 technology company in the world, a mega cap, the AI tools you're using are the same as all your competitors are using. And maybe you're going to marshal them slightly better than your competitors, but they still have the potential to do the same thing. So more of the content that your team shows up with in front of the customer will be homogenized in that I can have AI create a business case and you could have AI create a business case. And they're both done by the same AI with somewhat similar data. So is the business case going to be differentiated, or is the person telling the story? Is the person whose lips are moving, as you like to say, going to make the difference when they both have much better business cases than they would have a year ago because that business case was created by AI and it's more polished and it's better graphs and really is sweet and really defensible and really well annotated? But the difference maker probably more than ever is going to be the person who's telling that story.
there may be fewer, but they got to be spectacular.
Yeah.
Is what I think. One of the things that just rocked me a couple days ago, and I don't know how I missed this. Sometimes I think the retraction is printed on the back page where the original accusation is printed on the front page. Gartner put out a blog that said their most recent research said that buyers now prefer a human-led interaction to AI at a level of like 75%. It wasn't just a few years ago that Gartner was touting the fact that people wanted a rep-free experience. Yeah. And they literally called it a reversal. And I think that's interesting. And I think we can extrapolate it to success as well, that with all the AI, all that productivity, there's still a stalemate at some point. And in fact, maybe we're over-informed and somebody's got to sort it out.
I totally agree. And I think we're going to see this not only in the enterprise world, but in the consumer and personal world as well. That, so when I was at ServiceNow 7 years ago, our mantra was like, the best service is no service, meaning we were taking people out of it, right? The best customer service is no service, that you do it all yourself. Now we're on the other end of that pendulum swinging back, where people are looking for that human connection. You're seeing it, same thing with music, right? They're not interested in the streaming service. They're interested in going to the concert. They want the human experience. So I think that's going to be true in selling, in success, in renewals, in support. They want that human interaction because they're completely agentically fatigued around everything else. And so they're hungry for it. So I think there's a great future there for folks who build the skills, build the rapport, and are able to show up and step into that opportunity.
Awesome. Well, that gets us to our time. It went super fast. This was more brilliant than I even anticipated. Michael, you're so on top of these things, and I know our audience, some may be right there, some are still catching up in these areas, and I know they have found something of value here that they can find for their next when it comes to their customer experience organization. So as always, it's great to see you. Thanks for your insights, and appreciate all the work Ping is doing to keep us safe on top of it all.
Absolutely. We are out there every day keeping over 8 billion identities and accounts secure across all these different things. We take it very seriously, and we're humbled to do it. And we're humbled to be your partner as well, Tim, and everyone at CDI.
What a great episode. Thank you so much for joining us on YouTube or Apple, Spotify, wherever you like to get your podcasts. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow the show so that you can stay in step with new episodes. And we'll see you next time.